Alright, I want to showcase my Infernoid deck, and I will discuss all the combos that this unique build has afterwards. Firstly, it runs 3 Decatrons, which is normal, 2 Inokus, which is a little high, 2 Deviatis, also a little big, runs 2 Atondels, which is pretty normal, 2 Sitesmoss, which is normal, 1 Sajet, which needs some sort of discussion, 1 Piatti, which needs some sort of discussion, 2 Petrula, 2 Harmadic, 2 Antra, 1 Prometheus, which most people don't run. Could use some discussion. Alright, so these cards are going to need some sort of discussion and combos and reasons why they're in here. Alright, so I'm going to set those aside to talk about in a minute. Spells are pretty normal for the most part. Play 1 Reasoning, 1 Monster Gate, 1 for 1, Rekindling, Burial from a Different Dimension, 2 Twin Twisters. All your monsters are expendable, you can just throw them away. And then what's somewhat unique and worth discussing is the Void Engine. There's a total of 13 spells, including the Void Engine. So there are 3 Void Banishment, 1 Imagination, 1 Void Seer, 1 Void Expansion. That's the end of the spells. I'll discuss what all these cards are used for afterwards. On the trap end of the Void Engine, we have 3 Void Launch, 2 Void Purification, and then we have a few more regular traps. We have 2 Breakthrough Skills, 2 Safe Zones, which is different. I'll explain why these are in here in a bit, and triple Drowning Mirror Force. I'll explain why these are in here in a minute as well. So there's a couple of cards we need to talk about. Okay. As for the extra deck, it's a little unusual. Not that unusual, though. 2 Tiaras, Infernoid Tiara, the fusion monster. 3 Psyframe Lord Omega. I'll explain why I run so many in a minute. 1 Gaia Knight Force of Earth. That's sort of standard for Infernoids. 1 Scrap Archfiend. There's an OTK that uses Odd Eye's Absolute Dragon and Odd Eye's Meteor Burst Dragon, so I'll showcase that in a minute. I'll actually put these here to showcase. 1 Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend and 1 High Speed Red Chanbara. That's also an OTK. I'll get to that in a minute. 1 Clear Wing Synchro Dragon. There's a combo I can discuss with this. Stardust Spark Dragon. There's a combo I can discuss with this. Phantasmal Lord Ultimaya Vishbalkin. Infernoids can play this, not much else can. Playing it because it's a good stall card. I play 1 Galaxy Eyes Prime Photon Dragon just to get over Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. Let's get into what the side deck currently is. I'll explain the side deck as we go. Magical Spring. This is just meant to help me draw a few cards since most of my monsters are expendable, but I really don't want to play this in here. It was just it was taking the place of Mischief of the Gnomes, and since I can't mill it quite so reliably now, I put this in just temporarily while I try to decide what I'm going to play. So this is kind of an irrelevant side deck card at the moment. I play my other 2 Void Imaginations, which go in if my opponent plays additional extra deck monsters, like Pepe or BA. I run my last Twin Twister for the Pepe deck, or Draco Pals, whatever you want to call it. I run 2 Trap Stuns, which is for the to deal with the counter trap problem. If my opponent plays counter traps, I can trap stun them and then destroy them with Infernoid Deviati without destroying any of my own spells or trap cards, because Deviati doesn't destroy void spells or traps. I play 2 Jade Disappearance. This is for the Mermail matchup. Neptibus's effect activates as a trigger, not on its normal summon, so you can actually banish all 3 Neptibus with just these. I'll probably pull the Magical Springs for a second Chain Disappearance. I play 2 Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, because most of the meta contains light and dark, and at the moment I decided that the dark half of the Cosmo engine is the harder one to deal with. and I would like to play Soul Drain and Skill Drain, but I prefer to have, I would rather not play one-ofs that I need to draw. So Shadow Imprisoning, at least I can play 2 of. It feels a little better. I play the 3rd Breakthrough skill for Monarchs. Play 2 Fiend Comedian for any deck that goes into the graveyard. It's heads I win, tails you lose. And I play 1 Lava Golem at the moment, which is probably what I'll add another of, a 2nd Lava Golem for the other Magical Spring. You don't really normal summon a lot in this deck. Matter of fact, there's only 3 normal summonable monsters, 3 Decatrons, so attributing 2 monsters for the price of 1 card I find better than just playing a Kaiju. Additionally, if you do draw Reasoning, Lava Golem can't be normal summoned, so he'll get skipped on Reasoning. So let me go into some of the combos and some of the theory behind this build. The first theory I had about this deck is that I could actually afford to run additional cards. So there are actually 45 cards in this deck. 20 monsters, 13 spells, and 12 traps. And the reason for that is, by playing the Void Engine, I can actually open with a hand that looks something like this. Vanishment. I can use Vanishment to then search a Void spell or trap I don't currently have, or can fit on my board, so I can search my Purification. Okay, and then I can actually set 4 cards and make it kind of difficult for my opponent to make a decision on what to do. Additionally, it gives me cards to open with, cards to discard, and a way to get my engine rolling. Alright. And then, since this can be used once per turn, and every monster in the deck is expendable, you can just keep searching cards, and your opponent's going to have to eventually destroy this or get rid of it, or you're just going to build up a tremendous amount of advantage unless they OTK you. And with this much back row, until they see what's what, they're probably not going to attack you, or try to. They're going to try and deal with the back row. They're not just going to attack into a giant field full of trap cards. It's just ridiculous. I mean, if they have no fear, they'll do it, but I mean, the idea is if you open this many traps or back row cards this often, you'll survive a lot of OTK plans just because you have so much stuff that they have to get through. And every turn that Void Purification and Void Launch sit on the field, you build up a tremendous amount of advantage. I actually play also the 1 copy of Void Expansion, with the goal that if I fill up my spell and trap card zone with maybe 2 Void Launch and a Void Purification and Void Vanishment, I can play this and still gain advantage from the field spell zone to summon tokens and allow me to banish things and allow me to protect cards. So that's one idea there, is to conserve space. So all those are decent. The other interesting idea was to play Safe Zone as a trap card. The thought being that Safe Zone would allow Infernoid Sightsmoss to attack into any monster, even if it's one that was stronger than him. So he can attack into Cosmos ships and banish the card, which is non-targeting. I'm only playing 2 now. Originally I was playing 3. I had more counter traps, and continuous traps, and I was actually playing Magic Planner. So that was an idea as well. If you run a lot of cards, you have traps that eventually you run out of monsters in your deck to use, so playing Magic Planner on them, you can get even ahead with just drawing into spells and things you need. So this play is stolen from a different play, which is why the Stardust Spark Dragon's in the deck. He did the same thing, which other people have been playing. It's a good idea. And that is you use Spark Dragon to allow Sightsmoss to attack ships as well. Alright, so Safe Zone accomplishes the same thing as Spark Dragon, but Spark Dragon actually sends all the Void spells and trap cards to the graveyard, because he's a non-Infernoid monster, and the Void spells and the Void trap cards automatically send themselves to the graveyard in that case. The other weird thing about this deck is that I play Piatti and Sajet, who are normally considered pretty bad, but they actually give me access to OTKs that most people can't use. So besides that, they add the extra names required in order to use the 10 monster name of Infernoid Tierra, which I have used live, and it does wreck people's lives to see they have to discard their entire hand, when all your cards that you discard essentially do nothing. So nothing to you. It doesn't work out so well in the BA matchup, but anyways, let's talk about how to use Piatti and Sajet. So if you have a hand like this, a Decatron, a Harmodic, an Entra, or a Petrula, so any of these, you can summon the Decatron, send the one you don't have. So if you have Petrula in hand, you'll send Entra to the graveyard so that he becomes level 3. Then you'll summon Petrula, and you can synchro summon Scrap Archfiend, summon 2 Infernoids from the graveyard, you have 8,000 damage. Or more than 8,000. If you had Entra in hand, if you have Entra in hand, when you summon the Decatron, you'd send the Petrula, making him level 5. Summon the Entra, same play. The problem with all of these plays, there's one more play, I'll actually just get into that really fast. The last play is you open with, you have Harmodic in hand, so you have to use Decatron, send your other Harmodic from your deck, make him level 4, summon the other Harmodic, and then synchro for a 7. Summon 2 guys to get your 8,000 on board. Alright, so this deck has an advantage, I'd say, over the other one because you actually don't need to have any card in your hand. So let me show you how that works. If you summon Decatron, you can send Pirmaeus from the deck to make him level 2, and then summon Piatti from the graveyard. You don't even need a baby in your hand. That's a 7. Another option, if you feel like it, you don't even need to have this in the deck. You can just, if this isn't in the deck, just don't use Decatron's effect. He's level 1. Synchro for Gaia Knight, Force of Earth. The other option is if you have Sajet in the graveyard, do Sajet and don't use Decatron's effect. You have a level 7 Scrap Archfiend. Summon the other 2 guys and you win. So that's something that most people can't do. I admit that their effects aren't that great. His effect is horrible. Make them banish a random extra deck monster, their choice. Well, it's random to you. To them, it's their choice. And then they're just going to pick something that they don't need. Although you'll be surprised how often they pick a card that they wind up needing. So it's actually, it winds up working out better than it should, but it's not good. And if you can't kill your opponent, using Piatti to pull cards out of their hand is a decent strategy. I mean, you might as well control the game if you can't win the game there. Alright. I'll show you another couple of OTKs. So those are all the tuner OTKs. So if you don't have a tuner, let's say you play Reasoning and you mill your entire deck and you have to win this turn, which has happened to me several times, and I can win pretty often. You clear the board by summoning Inoku and banishing him and getting him off the field, or summon Deviati and banish her, get her off the field somehow. Then you want to put out damage you need to win. You summon 2 Seismos, you overlay for Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. Okay? Then you summon from your graveyard a Tondel. Attack with both, that's 5,600. If your opponent has to have a monster, any card in their graveyard, you can activate a Tondel's effect, tribute Odd Eyes Absolute. When you tribute Odd Eyes Absolute, you'll automatically special summon Odd Eyes Meteor Burst and attack with Odd Eyes Meteor Burst, and that's 8,100. Okay? A secondary way to do this, which can only be done in a build that runs Sajet, is if you happen to have Decatron in hand, and you can send Sajet to the graveyard, make him level 7, then you only need to summon the 1 Seismos, which saves you on levels, because this OTK uses a lot of cards. So now that you have this, you can overlay into Odd Eyes Meteor Burst, summon a Tondel, attack, tribute, and summon Odd Eyes Meteor Burst. So either way, you'll get out that combo. Alright, and I have one more combo I wanted to show. We'll do that. One last 8,000 damage OTK is to summon Clearwing Synchro Dragon, summon Inoku, activate his effect, negate it with Clearwing, and he'll have 5,500 attack points. Now you just summon another Infernoid, attack for game. I was always having trouble using my Clearwing to negate my own effects, because they all would happen in the battle phase after I've already attacked, and then I have to destroy my monster, and it was always a pain. But Inoku is the easiest way to get that off. Another great play you can make in this deck is if your opponent summons a monster from the extra deck while you have this card, or if you draw into this card, you can actually fusion summon on your opponent up to 2 times in that turn. So if you already have Imagination in your hand, you can activate it, send it to the graveyard, fusion summon by sending 6 Infernoids to the graveyard, 1 Inoku, 1 Deviati, and 5 others. So you just milled 6 cards and summon Infernoid Tiara. When you summon Infernoid Tiara, you can use Infernoid Tiara's effect to send 3 cards from your extra deck to the graveyard. And you can send 3 copies of Psyframe Lord Omega. Well, they send whatever. This doesn't work so well against BA because they send Dante's and they get cards back. But one of the things you can do is return this to your extra deck, return this to your main deck, activate Void Banishment, discarding some sort of a card, any card would be fine. Discard a card, search for the Imagination. Then by playing it, you reduce his level to 1, so you can summon a Sight's Moss, tribute off the Tiara, summon all your other monsters because your level at the moment is low, is 1, so all these monsters can be summoned. Return these to your deck, get some other sort of limited 1 cards, like a Reasoning back to the deck, or something else like that. And then you can just send this to the graveyard, fusion summon again, summon Tiara, send the 3 Omegas to the graveyard again, and then you have a giant field. Your graveyard's completely stocked, and it's really hard to lose at this point. One last thing that's my favorite thing to do with this deck, uses Void Purification. Alright, so this will start face down. You'll normal summon a Decatron, sending whatever Infernoid you want that can tribute itself during your opponent's standby phase. So your opponent enters their turn. You can activate Purification. You could tribute this off first, but you tribute it off and you add it back to your hand during their standby phase. And then you can return a Banished Infernoid during your standby phase. And you can just do this loop every turn, milling 1 card each time, giving yourself an effect that's useful each time. So unless you make this into a Inoku or Deviati, you can tribute this off during your opponent's turn as long as they have a card in their graveyard. You can just loop this and loop this and loop this. So this card in Decatron makes this deck sustain itself. I think I covered all of the particularities and combos that are in this deck. Yeah, so it runs traps for protection. It's got 45 cards so that I still can run a 20 card monster count while not drawing too many monsters. A lot of the cards that I can draw either do the things I want them to do, so the void cards, or will search the void cards, or will protect me while I draw into void cards. Yeah, I think that covers everything. And I know the goal is not to draw Reasoning and win in this deck. Drawing into a card like that and milling randomly could accomplish nothing or a lot, so I don't rely on it, but I mean, not playing them would be ridiculous, since you can win you a game. But I mean, I've reasoninged for 1 monster, I've reasoninged for like 12 spells and 1 monster. It just happens sometimes. But by having these other spells, you can get a lot more done. Oh, one last thing, it just suddenly came to mind. If your opponent were to try to Twin Twister your safe zone, you can actually activate it and target their monster, and then when safe zone is destroyed, their monster will die. So that's it was a secondary combo me and my brother came up with to make use of this card. Alright, any suggestions or ideas, leave comments below.